Welcome all. It is Thursday, May 28th, 2026. And I'm going to have some fun tonight, even on a topic that isn't necessarily fun, at least in the traditional conceptual way of thinking of war. But here we are. And clearly this isn't your normal traditional war. At least that we can understand, or that anything that anybody my age or older, or even younger for that matter, can at least comprehend or understand as something that we can understand as a war, fighting another country, fighting other people, killing other people, having our people killed, etc. But here we are, and there is, as I mentioned in Tuesday's show, there is a comical aspect to this. Again, set aside the normal traditional view or understanding of war as not good. It isn't. Put that to the side for 1 second in a normal traditional way. And when you add everything up and you analyze everything front, back, top to bottom, day 1 to day 90, and there is a comedic aspect to the way this has gone down, gone on, gone forward, because there's no end in sight. Even if you're hearing, oh, there's a deal. Yeah, there was a deal day 1. There was a deal day 30. There was a deal. I'm tired of hearing about the deals. The greatest deal maker all time. Wrong, lie, no surprise. So I thought I'd have a little bit of my own fun. Again, not at the expense of our soldiers and our people in uniform, because as most of you that watch me know, I'm a vet and I wore the nation's cloth, and I come from a family on both sides, my mom's and my dad's, a long line and a long tradition of serving this country and giving everything that you are to this country and its principles. That has never changed, never will change until I'm in a box. So it has nothing to do with that. But it has everything to do with the state in which, the status quo, the state in which we are today in terms of the people that are leading this country, running this country, and that started this war. There is no overpowering gravitational pull, gravitas, of a Franklin Delano Roosevelt going to Congress and asking to declare war after we were bombed in Pearl Harbor. There is no Abraham Lincoln standing up and giving a Gettysburg Address in a civil war that rent and tore this country in half and to pieces. There's no Woodrow Wilson, World War I, who established and came up or began the concept of a union, a league, a conglomeration, an organization that is global and that can prevent war or stop war. This is definitely not, the Revolutionary War and founding principles, even the War of 1812. Openly fighting against the initial enemy, the British, and fighting on our own soil, fighting for our very existence. And, I'm going to be careful here with regard to Vietnam without just running through a list chronologically of all of our wars in this country's history. But I will say this, even underlying with regard to Vietnam, and this is a time after. It was my dad's generation and my uncles that were in Vietnam. And if not us questioning today, like, why did we go to Vietnam? Why did we lose life's blood treasure there in a foreign war on another nation's soil? We can at least understand today that there was a concept behind the rationale, whether we agree with what they did or not. Those presidents, first John F. Kennedy, then LBJ, et cetera. And whether we agree with they should or should not have done that and embroiled us into that conflict. We understood the rationale for why they would do that. And that was simple. Communist Russia was growing. They were the other superpower after World War II. And we had two antithetical ideologies and philosophies and governance and belief in our systems. We believed in freedom, democracy, all the cool hoorah stuff that does apply. It's applicable today. And we felt that we were right and that we had to fight for democracy and we had to fight against communism and everything that communism represented. So it was understood. That was the belief. That was the understanding. And it was a rationale that was comprehensible, that you could understand, that you could view, listen to, learn, and make a decision on. Vietnam. Go forward. We had some other, Panama. Won't spend too much time on that. I mean, we've been doing a lot of, stuff. I say stuff, our government and our military, et cetera, for a long time. To my period of time when I was in during the first Persian Gulf War. And even though, hindsight 30 years later, yeah, I do question like the rationale and the why. I think that's fair. And I'm a soldier. At the time, I didn't question. I was a soldier. And it was not my job to question. My job was to execute the order, whatever it was that they gave us, or whatever our job was, whatever our mission was, whatever our objective was, as a military, as a unit, as a soldier in uniform, period. You just don't do that. You don't question. You just do. You execute. That's your job. But with hindsight again, and 30 years since that time, and everything that has gone on since in other parts of the world, including back in that desert, the desert Middle East in particular, I always felt that at the very least, it was simple in understanding that Saddam Hussein attacked Kuwait, and I'm going to make it like, calle ghetto street stuff. All right. You had a bully. They picked on a little guy. And again, there were a lot of other reasons. Oil and energy not being the least of them, by the way. But I understood. It was comprehensible. You had a bully picking on a little guy, and we went and defended the little guy. And I'm going to make some distinction here in this opening point, and stay with me. But it was understood that we were going to defend the little guy, and that we were not going to do that alone, meaning the United States rushes to the defense of Kuwait against Iraq. George H.W. Bush and his apparatus, military apparatus, upper administration, Secretary of Defense, et cetera, they brought along and they marshaled and put together a coalition. And I apologize, I don't have all the numbers in particular right in front of me right now. I wasn't like specifically going to talk about just that. But a large conglomeration of the world's militaries, a lot of our NATO allies, by the way, North Atlantic Treaty Organization allies that had been with us since World War II and the fall of World War II and the fall of the imperialist nations, Germany, Japan, etc., and that world order. And people don't like that term, but there's nothing wrong with it if it's done properly. World order, meaning not disorder, not chaos, not militaries fighting and another world war, another World War III. Never happened. They put together that conglomeration. They put together that league, that union, that alliance of nations. And then in essence, we beat the hell out of Iraq because we didn't go in by ourselves. We went in we rolled heavy. Like to tell people, I didn't go into that alley by myself. I rolled in with 5 of my primos and we threw down and we won. I didn't go in solo. I went with help. I went with an army. We did that. Our army did that. We had allies. We had other militaries. We had other armies with us. And so if you're going to go in, there's a rule in military. If you're going to go in, you go in with overwhelming force, or you don't go in at all. You go in with overwhelming force to end it as soon as possible, because that means a lesser loss of life. If you do it overwhelming, you do it fast, overwhelming, and get the hell out, you will lose less life. And that's smart. Okay, that's smart. And then, of course, after that, I'm not, and I've said that on air, and I've said that for years, I was not a fan, advocate, or believer in weapons of mass destruction. I thought it was bullshit. I thought it was lying. I didn't think there was capability on the part of Iraq and then into Afghanistan, of those nations. Excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the weapons of mass destruction thing, I wasn't for that. After 9/11, and then we end up in Afghanistan too. After trying to get Osama bin Laden, we ended up doing that. But I didn't believe that. I didn't believe that there were weapons of mass destruction that can bring harm to the United States and its citizens. And I'm proven right on that. That ended up being true. But we went in, and I've said this one time, only once on air before, and I'm going to say it right now. I did not believe in that. I did not believe that there were weapons of mass destruction. I did not believe that we should be sending or engaging and embroiling and embedding in the Middle East that way. I thought there were other things going on. There was something else going on that we were not knowing, or that we could not know because they weren't telling us. And yeah, it ended up being the case. Again, oil, energy, Middle East politics. And I've said that before. Engaging and embroiling in Middle East politics, it's like trying to capture rain with your hand. People have been trying to do that for 5,000 years. And no one has solved that problem. And oh yeah, but we will. We're the ones. We're the only ones that can do it. Just us. And if you take my meaning and understanding and get the scope of it, people have been thinking that literally for 5,000 years in that particular part of the world. And they've all been wrong. So past is predicate. It's actually stupid in advance to think that you're going to be the sole one after 5,000 years of recorded history that will solve and understand Middle Eastern politics and war. You're stupid. And I don't use that word often, but I'll use it now. Okay? So fast forward, encompass all of that. Wasn't for that. But because I believe in my country and principle, and I believe in service, my son served in Iraq. 82nd Airborne Infantry, pulled his tour of duty in Iraq. Even if fundamentally I didn't believe in us and the rationale for us being there. So no one gets to accuse me or question me on that stroke. You do not. I would give my life for my country. My son was willing to give his, etc. Even if we didn't believe in the bullshit they were spitting. Fast forward to now, and this is where I'm going to have my fun today. The title for today's show, at least the first portion, is How to Lose a War in 90 Days. How to Lose a War in 90 Days. And for those of you out there that are guys that watch my show, and if not, ladies, etc., I was joking and having some fun with some other things, and I kind of kept going over, like, if you wanted to lose a war, if you're the United States, the most powerful country on the planet, the most powerful military the world has ever seen, all true, by the way, no hyperbole, all true. The understanding is that we cannot lose a war because we're badass. We got the best military. We got the most money. We got all this stuff, and all, again, true. All true. However, and therein lies the rub. However, if you had to manufacture craft for the sake of argument and for the intellectual exercise / thought experiment of it, you may have to rewind that portion and listen to all that again. But for the exercise of it, the intellectual exercise and the thought experiment of it, how would you go about losing a war if you're the United States? Now, on record, clearly, I don't want to say, oh, I want us to lose. No, damn sure no. Those are our kids, our people. I don't want us to lose a war. But again, for the exercise of it, the intellectual exercise of it, the thought experiment of it. And there is an intellectual gain to it, by the way, to craft. And for the record, our military does this. Our upper brass, our most intelligent, advanced commanders, flag and staff and general officers, they do this. They war game out the possibilities and eventualities of how we could lose or how we can be hit and how we could not do well. So I'm not doing anything that isn't done already. However, how would we do that? How could we lose a war? The concept of it, again, as I said a little bit earlier, is antithetical to even consider because we're the United States. It's a non sequitur. It does not follow. It doesn't make sense. You can't say that the United States can lose. No, it's impossible. Inarguably not true. Inarguably not true. We can understand that any military, any people, any group can lose if the circumstances are right. Or in this case, if the circumstances are wrong for us. If things are bad or things go wrong or something's done, it is possible that we can lose a war. So let's begin and start with that premise. We're not going to go too long today, but I'm going to hit you really hard with this thought, and I want you to internalize it. You know my rule? This is the show for the thinking Mexican. There's an exercise here intellectually that I want you to process and to continue with even after the show's done, but I want you to consider it. Okay, the intellectual exercise. If you're still with me, if we're 17 minutes in and you're listening, or if you're listening this after, what is it we can do in this particular war that over time and after we could actually qualify or quantify as a loss? Now let's begin with the simple. This is going to be a damn good show today. I can tell you right now, this is going to be a damn good show, if not just for the intellectual exercise of it, but the thought of it. And the show to you that I'm not afraid to not just think outside the box, that old term, but to show you that I love my country so much that I'm willing to analyze and exercise everything about it, even the negative, without loss of belief in this country, without loss of belief of what I believe our founding principles are and why we have been the best country on the planet. Not perfect. A lot of shit we need to clean up and still haven't figured out, but better than all the others. Okay? And how do you get better? How do you maintain that? By actually analyzing the ugly shit too. You can't get better if you don't know what's wrong. You can't improve if you're not aware of the things that are not good. And that is quite literally what we're doing here today. So let's start with this premise. One, obviously, you don't want to believe, or it's not, it's not even doable, possible to think that we could lose. But you have to run it. You have to run that exercise and war game that out and analyze it for what the possibilities are. So here we are. We're in a war. And I'm going to lay out for you a handful of items that are true objectively. There's no subjectivity here. There's no, well, I think this, you think that, or I believe this, I believe that. No, these are objectively true things that are measurably objective and truthful. And the only way you can argue these if you're in the cult, because if you're in the cult, you can argue anything. You literally can. And I'm not exactly stating that term or that making that statement in a positive sense. It's entirely pejorative, by the way. Nothing good about it. Okay, so if you're in the cult, hell, you believe whatever he feeds you. Shit tacos, give me some salsa. Hell yeah, I'll have more. So let me give you the items that I've got listed that I kind of just played with a little bit. How to lose it. Let me run back a second. Okay, so I was going to say that how to lose a war in 90 days. I was flipping around and having some fun, intellectually, how would we do this? How can we think this out? How can we game this out? And I thought about that movie again. If you're a guy or a gal, whatever, and this is where I was going with that for a second, but the movie with Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson. And I'm not normally a rom-com guy. I'm not watching a lot of chick flicks. I do once in a while. Depending on the actor or actresses that are in it, that matters to me. And I kind of happened on that. I think my wife was watching, my daughter was watching, something like that. And I kind of like, and I'm like, I might as well finish it. But the premise of it is funny. The premise of it is what got me, not the actors. Not a big fan of Kate Hudson, Matthew McConaughey, kind of like, for the right movie, right stuff. All right. I was like, all right, we're going to watch. But I like the premise of it. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That's the movie. All right. I'm plugging the movie, right? But it's hysterical because in essence, it's like a bet. She's taking a bet that this guy who likes her, that she can dust him in like 10 days. And they even, you have to watch the movie. But in essence, she's going to dust him in 10 days. And so he's trying hard to, get with her and be boyfriend, girlfriend, et cetera, go further, right? And she's leading him on with the intent that she's got to dust him before day 10. All right. So in essence, she's working hard to string him along with the ultimate intent that she's not going to, and then you get the rom-com stuff and it ends up working it out. Then they abstain together, all that hoorah. But I laughed about the premise of it. How would you go about, and here we go, for our topic today, how would you go about getting rid of somebody, getting rid of a guy, dusting him, not having him, him coming after you, wanting you, but you finding a way to get him to not want you anymore and to move on? And I had some fun with it. I laughed about it. Then the intellectual exercise is, how would I, if I'm the most powerful country on the planet, how the hell would I manage to lose a war? And it just stuck with me. Hence the title. How to Lose a War in 90 Days. How to Lose a War in 90 Days. We are at Trump-Epstein War, day 90. The Trump-Epstein War. We are at day 90. Roughly 3 months. War is not over, clearly. Heard today there's going to be a deal. We've heard that. Like I said earlier, there's a deal announced, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Said if it doesn't happen, then it won't happen. I'm like, can you make sense? Speak quality English, please. That's another issue that I've got. A president that cannot speak beyond the 6th grade level of English. Listen, I'm the dirty Mexican, criticizing the fat orange oaf for his quality of English, or let me be more explicit, his lack thereof. His lack of quality English ability to speak and make sense rationally so that we can understand and comprehend the stupidities that come out of his mouth. So, how to lose a war in 90 days. How to lose a war in 90 days. For starters, announce on day 1 that you've already won. Now, I want you to, to sit on that for a second. Sit on this for a second. And how does this play to our exercise here? You start a war and you claim victory on day 1. You claim a victory before you know what the enemy is or is not capable of, because we've only gone 1 day. We bombed the hell out of him. We killed people. And how do you know I'm correct and right about pointing that out? How to lose a war? By announcing on day 1 that you won? Well, it's day 90. And the war is ongoing and continuing. Subtle reminder. My fault. I apologize. I should have started this, as I have with all of it, in terms of the Trump-Epstein War. For those of you that have been here for a bit, you know what the answer is, what's coming. I'll give you it in the form of a question, Jeopardy. This Trump-Epstein War that is illegal, unconstitutional, and incompetent. I have to make sure I'm clear on that, because I said that I will always say that if I reference this stupid-ass war. Okay? Illegal, unconstitutional, and incompetent. Okay, back to business. Announce on day 1 that you already won. And because you do that, you are losing if after day 1 you have not clearly won. Get it? We didn't win. It's not done. You don't win a war in day 1 and the war is ongoing. It does not follow. It's a non sequitur. It doesn't make sense, right? But we've grown accustomed to it because numbnuts speaks that way. And even though we deep down inside don't understand what the hell he's saying, we just accept it as like, well, whatever the hell he's saying. And then when it actually comes out and actually something's done, then we try to reverse engineer it making sense. That's too damn much work for anybody to do. Make some goddamn sense. If you're the leader of the free world, at least be able to speak English. So there's item 1. How to lose a war in 90 days. Announce that you won it before it's over. That's not a win. You don't win on day 1 and it's existing and continuing and not done on day 90. Crystallize that point, my viewer, my audience, and understand. You are losing if you say you won, but 89 days later, the war is ongoing. You look like an idiot. You look stupid. And it's communicating a message to our people, our soldiers, our civilians, our country, that none of this makes sense and it's stupid. Therefore, you can't go to, oh, we won. Clearly, we did not. It's not done. So you lost. You're losing because we haven't won. Understood? Number 2, after day 1. Because it was clear that before day 1, he didn't do these things that I'm about to enumerate or talk about. Clearly, Donald Trump did not go to our allies in NATO and other allies throughout the world, consult with them, talk to them, get them on board, a la George H.W. Bush back for the Persian Gulf War that I earlier referenced. Didn't get a bunch of people on board, didn't build a monster army of all kinds of nations and people to get their buy-in and to get them involved. So we're not the only ones losing lives. We're not the only ones losing money. That's just smart. That is just smart. So if that was done then and we're not doing that now, by extension, then clearly if I said that was smart, then this is not. The way they went about this start of a war was not smart because we did not go out and get allies. We did not bring other militaries in with us. We did not communicate a vision. We did not communicate a message. We did not communicate something that is comprehensible to our allies and our friends around the world that was objectively good for not just us, but for them as well. We did not do that at all. And so my second point, you alienate and lose your allies. And that is also a recipe for loss. That is a recipe for loss. I've stated before on prior shows, one-on-one, mano a mano, with any country on this planet, if it's just one other country, there is no other country that can defeat us one-on-one in a war in that fashion. Okay? However, as I stated earlier in the show, you actually want allies. You want buy-in. You want more people involved. If you're going to go in on something, you go in heavy, like really heavy. I'm not walking into that alley by myself to get my ass whooped by 2 or 3 vatos that don't like me. I'm walking into my cousins. I'm walking into all my primos and saying, we're going to throw down. I need some backup. I'm going in with 6 guys. Not going in there solo because I'm going to take an ass whooping by myself. I get jumped. I'm going in heavy. Same thing here. Applicable from the very, very lowest of concepts, a street fight with just one guy and another guy or a couple guys, to war. You go in heavy. You go in with allies. You share the burden. You don't all take the cost on your own individually as one country. And it didn't help that because he is a petty, simple little sack of shit, Donald Trump, he talked crap about, made fun of, disrespected other countries, our allies. So why would they want to? You're going to talk shit about them and they're going to what? Jump on board like, oh yeah, we like you making fun of us, talking crap about us, minimizing our soldiers, our values, our militaries. And yeah, we really want to help you now. And clearly that hasn't panned out because they're not. Another way to lose a war. Alienate and lose your allies so that you are solo for the most part, but we are bearing the heavy brunt of the cost in lives and economy. In economy. We are going to lose the lives. Our American people, our kids are going to die. Our economy is shredded right now. I only want to talk about gas prices, food prices. I said last episode, everything is going to go up and going to continue to go up and get worse. No matter how much he tries to manipulate the market. Like, oh, look, the barrel went down. I don't give a shit. Oh, look, stocks are up. I don't give a shit about stocks being up. When I walk around the street in Hinton and can barely afford, I went to I was at a supermarket the other day, and there was a mom and dad with the little kid in the cart literally counting their change so they can get that last item in their grocery basket. And I don't know the full story there. It was an indictment on the state in which we exist today as a country. That is where we are. So, number 2, how to lose a war in 90 days. Alienate, lose, and don't have any allies supporting you or helping you, sharing the cost, sharing the burden, sharing the loss of life, sharing the loss of money, wealth, sharing the loss of missiles and munitions. It's all on us. And I say us because it ain't Donald Trump's fat ass that's paying for this war. It's the taxpayer. It's American taxpayer that is paying the brunt of this war by far. Well, he talks about building a fucking ballroom so his fat ass can go dance and do the two-handed strokey cock maneuver. Number 2, alienate, lose your allies. Don't share the burden. Don't share the cost. Take it all yourself and suffer for your people. Number 3 item, how to lose a war in 90 days. And I've spoken to this a little bit, but I'm going to summarize and crystallize it in a one-liner. You, as an opponent, make more money for your enemy. Again, factually true. No debate, no argument. We have made more money for Iran during this war. We are making them more money. He lifted sanctions. They're selling their oil. Sometimes the barrels go up in price and they make even more money off it. We're making them more money. Last I checked, that's kind of stupid when you're at war with someone. Make them more money. And you can quibble on the edges about whether we're doing that and what the cost of that is and how much money they're making, but it still remains a fact. We are making the enemy more money. And forgive me for my traditional, old-fashioned way of military thinking, but that is ass-hat stupid. And yet, another way of how to lose a war in 90 days. 4. I'm going to keep it to 5. 5 items that you won't forget, and then I'll read them all to you as if I was back in the classroom and give you my objectives. Segue. Have no clear objective. Start a war and don't know, don't articulate, don't communicate, don't make clear the actual objective for why you're starting this war. And we've seen over the 90 days multiple rationales, multiple excuses, multiple explanations for why we're at war with the country on the other side of the planet that does not have the capability to harm us. Period. End of story, full stop, done. Drop the damn mic. They do not. The last iteration of it, the most talked about or the most spoken out of the 6th grade lard ass's mouth is, I don't want Iran to have nukes. Which is objectively simpleton on steroids. Anabolic steroids. Yeah. Anybody worth an iota of intellect on this planet can just say, yeah, let's hope that the Iranians don't get nukes because the world becomes a more deadly place tomorrow if the Iranians actually have nuclear capability with the ability to move those missiles and launch and actually hit other countries with ease. Okay. Have no clear objective. So that's the largest and most used rationale of late that comes out of the fat sixth grader's mouth. I don't want Iran to have nukes. But you'll notice and you'll see, because it is an open-ended articulation, it is an open-ended statement, in theory, and I want you to consider this. You need to consider this. The show for the thinking Mexican. Think about this. We could, in essence, be here forever. And he can just keep stating, well, I don't want them to have nukes, so we got to stay there, or we got to keep attacking, we got to keep hitting, we got to keep at war with them because we don't want them to have nukes. Never mind the fact that, and listen, I wasn't the biggest Obama foreign policy guy. There were things about his foreign policy I did not like, and I said so. But you got to fall somewhere in between what Obama did have, the JCPOA, the nuke deal that he had with Iran, and what we have now. And as of right now, because there has been no clear objective other than, hey, the Epstein files are getting hot, maybe I'll go start a war and pick a fight with someone so that the American people, at least a portion of them that are stupid as shit, will follow the bouncing ball away from that shiny object and move on to something else and leave the Epstein files alone. And for the record, I've said this before, it has happened. The Epstein files interest has gone down because there's another shiny object. We're at war. You know the term, wag the dog, right? Literally wag the dog. We've seen that in this country. It's happened before, and it's happened in other countries. It happens historically, literally throughout history, quite literally. Something's bad. Oh, let's get the attention away from the bad thing and start something else over here. So most of the people, the majority of the people, the populace will not pay attention to the bad thing. Don't look at the guy behind the curtain, right? So have no clear objective. The nukes things, it really doesn't make sense because we can be saying that going back years. He could have picked a fight with Iran. Watch this, and this is how you know it to be true. If he really believed and he really gave a shit about Iran having nukes, why didn't he pick this fight in his first term? Ain't that a son of a bitch? That damn thing called logic, right? Wow. Logic. Hold on, Supermix. That makes too much damn sense. That can't be right? If Donald Trump actually gave a shit about Iran having nukes, then why didn't he do this in his first term? And then insert random MAGA nutsack with a rationale to find a way to make that excusable too. And as usual, let's give them a couple shit tacos and ask what kind of salsa they want. All right. So it doesn't make sense. It's incoherent. In addition to a bunch of other things, wanted to take away. Let's just articulate them real quick and I'll move on. Have no clear objective. The objectives that they've given or stated or said that they're fighting for is we want Iran to not have nuclear weapons. We wanted to degrade their capability militarily. We wanted to liberate the Iranian people from a regime. And as I state all of those, they're all horseshit. Objectively, provably horseshit. No clear objective. The objective changes. And last point to this before I move on from that. There's one other group that this damages, by the way, that this damages at its core that matters, at least to me, if not you. Having no clear objective damages our nation's military, our commanders, our combatant commanders, our men and women in uniform. The entire system of the United States military, the United States Army, from which I come from, the United States military in general, is predicated on understanding clear chain of command, clear objectives, clear mission objectives, things that we know to be true and that we can get behind. And when you blur those lines and when you blur those communications, you blur those objectives, you damage our military. You fuck with us to our core. Not all will say that, but I will. If we're all being honest, all military people are being honest, they'll tell you, we do not like disorder. We do not like some asshat changing his mind as the wind blows. It's a problem. It's damaging our military as we speak. I had to say that. I had to get that in there because I want you to know that. I want my listener, my viewer to understand that objectively. Disorder, chaos, no clear objective, no adequate lines of clear communication, an articulated vision for what we are doing and why we are there damages our nation's military, and it fucks with our soldiers, our sailors, airmen, etc. That's going on right now. Lastly, 5, and I'm going to reiterate these in a second and give you the one-liners, and then we'll wrap up here real quick. But this is a hard-hitting, in your gut look at where we are on day 90. How to lose a war in 90 days. Now, before I finish up here on 5, I'm not going to sit here and say we lost the war. I'm not saying that. But we're running the intellectual exercise, the thought experiment. How would you lose a war in 90 days? And I'm providing you with things that are objectively, measurably true and that we're living through as we speak, as I look you in the camera and talk to you tonight. These things are taking place. They've already been done. I'm using facts for you to show you that even if not on a battlefield where it is really difficult, if nearly impossible, not probable, that we could lose a war on a battlefield. We're not doing that because clearly we're not on the battlefield. We don't get on the battlefield. We just bomb the shit out of people, which is another thing to analyze for later. How do you win a war? By seizing, holding ground, and controlling it. How are you going to do that if you have no people that are actually on the ground? And you know where that goes. Boots on the ground, all that bullshit, all that hoorah. Well, it's true. How can you actually win a war if you're not there? Just bomb the shit out of people? Which leads to my larger argument. How to lose a war in 90 days. We may get to a point where we don't actually have the opportunity or the chance of winning this war. It may be unwinnable. That is largely arguable, but a damn good argument to have. We may have entered into, because of numbnuts himself, into a war that we cannot win because of the things that I've articulated here for you today. So 5, and it really does feed all the others, and it feeds everything. There are other things, by the way, that I was playing with and tinkering with that I'm going to keep it to 5 here. But there are other things that I can point to that are objectively true, that are facts, that are leading us to a loss or the appearance of a loss in the eyes of the world, if not our own country. This one encapsulates, crystallizes, and informs all the others for the simple and obvious reason. They come from a single source, a source. So how do you lose a war in 90 days? Have the most incompetent candy asses running the show. And I'll lay fire here, lift and shift from Numbnuts 1 to his Secretary of Defense, Hegseth. What we have here is literally a perfect storm of incompetence running a war. Donald Trump, who will probably go down as the most well-known, he'll probably like that, the most well-known draft dodger in American history. Let me repeat that, reiterate the point for you because you're going to like it, you're going to love it, you're like, holy shit, that's all true, right? That is fact. Donald Trump will go down as the most famous, notorious, all kinds of other cool, descriptives. He will be known as the most well-known, in my world, not for the good reasons, he will go down as the most well-known draft dodger, Commander Bone Spurs, in the history of the United States military for not serving. There is no one else that's going to be known more than this draft dodger. He is running this war. The guy that he has running it as his right hand in this comedy of errors, Pete Hegseth, wannabe frat boy badass as number 2. Those two, and I'm going to, again, because it really informs all the other points that I've articulated here, the other 4, it is because of Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth that we are quite literally looking at what will end up being the United States' most incompetent, ill-conceived, ill-advised, ill-constructed, and ill-managed war in American history. I feel really strongly and really accurately that I will be right on that, if not already right on that. Already. These two, who in any other circumstances would not even be in a position, they wouldn't have made it. They're incompetent. They're not capable. But because of our electoral process, here we are. How do you lose a war in 90 days? I was going to say 10 days. 90, you can make the argument we lost after 10 days, by the way. How to lose a war in 10 days. Get Matthew McConaughey to give his little like, all right. How to lose a war in 90 days. And I saved it for last, but it can easily be the first point. Have the most incompetent candy asses running the show. And all else is fruit of the poisonous tree. All right? Fruit of the poisonous tree. Whatever falls from that tree is garbage because these two are that tree. They started it. And everything that comes from it is fruit from that poison tree. That's 5. Could have easily been 1, but you can see how it informs and controls all the other. So let me wrap up here. How to lose a war in 90 days. Day 1, announce stupidly that we already won. 2, alienate, talk shit about, and lose your allies. 3, make your enemy more money. 4, for those of us that are military minded, have no clear objective, have no understanding of what it means to actually win. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? What are we winning? Have no clear objective. That's 4. And then 5 could easily be 1, can easily be all encompassing, one umbrella for all of it, that it all flows from. Have the most incompetent candy asses running the show. And there you go. That's how you lose a war in 90 days. And again, you could literally make the argument. And for the record, I'm not alone here. There are other military experts / personnel, former military, prior service military, commanders, etc., that are also making the argument. I'm not alone here, and I'm not taking from them. These are my rationales. They have others, and I'm not disagreeing with them. They're right. But they've already argued that we've already lost this thing. We've already lost this war. And that the longer we're doing this, the more damage we're causing, not only to our military itself, which is objectively, provably true, but also to this country and this nation and its perception in the world today. You're hearing that on the outskirts, on the edges, but it is true, ladies and gentlemen. That is true. Let me stop there. That is 5. I would advise you to go back and listen to all of those 5 things, argue them with yourself. If I'm wrong and you feel so, then so be it. But I'm feeling pretty strongly once you, like objectively, like fairly, think about this war and everything that is entailed to this point, you're going to see that like, okay, yeah, fuck, we may have lost this thing already. I don't see a positive outcome to this. there is no positive outcome that we can say, oh, we benefited this way as a people, that this country is better off for this fucking war. Those are the 5. I hope you had some fun. I had some fun in my way. We do have, and I want to wrap up now when we're at 50. I like keeping it at 45, 50 range as much as possible. Not forever, not always, as much as we can. But I did also add to the title. I think I'm gonna skirt it a little bit. But the election, I think I stated this last time, and I didn't get to it today. The election in California's primary is next Tuesday. As I said in the prior episode, you have a right to vote. Doesn't mean you should. Don't vote for shit you don't know or don't understand. Don't vote for people that are objectively bad. There's only 2 candidates and they both suck. Don't vote for any of them. It's your right to vote. Doesn't mean you have to. Don't vote for shit if it's bad. You're just exacerbating the problem. That's why we got a fat orange piece of shit in the office. Okay? So election is on Tuesday, primary. I think I'm going to hold my powder on this, keep it a little bit dry, because we are in a primary and we are going to go to a general, and I will be on air and we'll be getting down to that point. And I think I will, for the first time ever, actually endorse some candidates that I feel strongly enough about to be good and good for us in my particular region, for sure. But then as a whole, right? In the primaries, after the primaries, when we get into the general election for the midterms, we'll get to that point. That's it for tonight. Have some fun, if not some intellectual exercise about the things that I articulated for you tonight. This is serious shit. We're in a war. Illegal, unconstitutional, and incompetent. All of the above true. But don't look away. I know this shit is ugly. I don't like talking about it. Most people don't want to talk about it. But therein lies the issue. By not talking about it, by ignoring it, by refusing to acknowledge it, the evil fuckers that started this war, they win. If we're not engaged and we don't fight back and we don't say this is wrong, the majority of this country does not want this war. We need to start puckering up and, getting tough and not taking this shit and start saying something about it. I'm on air saying something about it. That's the whole point, right? That is the point. That is the real America. Stand up and don't take shit if it's wrong. Okay, we'll be back Tuesday. We'll be more consistent, obviously, going forward about the Tuesday, Thursdays for sure. And then I've been wanting to get to a few surprises. We can add in some other things to add some color and some additional. But as usual, go off into your weekend, pay attention. The show for the Thinking Mexican. Think about the things we went over tonight, and then use that as your frame of reference as we go into the weekend and you see more garbage coming. To avoid a trap, you must know of its existence. To avoid an intellectual trap, you must know of its existence before it comes to you so you can defeat it. That's our show for tonight. Supermex, I'll be back on Tuesday. Nothing but love for you. Be safe, be careful, and always, as usual, be paying attention.